Welcome back to another video where I want to get into some detail about solving problems you didn't know you had. Now this really highlights and pinpoints the power of self-discovery, the power of understanding your own self and referencing your own version of reality. Your world is not the same as my world, and my world is not the same as somebody else's. So at what point in your life did you start to map it? Did you start to model it? Did you start to try to understand how your world is very different to other people's, and what is outside of your perception? What is outside of your version of reality that you can't see? Now, this isn't very easy to describe or to explain. Now, the best thing I've found so far is Steve Jobs and his 5,000 concepts. This idea of there are these 5,000 different things that you can play with, you can mold, and things become different on a day-to-day basis. Now, obviously, he's talking about products, phones, but this is the same in your own version of reality. The way you derive meaning from things and the way you project meaning onto things. These things, these concepts can become very different. The things you were afraid of, you can embrace. The things you ran away from, you move towards. The things you didn't understand, you then realise are in your life, and you can change things quite drastically working with these different concepts. This idea of referencing your own self to become your own self, to become your full self, and have what I believe is an integrated self. So you're living in harmony with your reality, you're in charge of your own emotions, you understand yourself and who you are and how you work and what's good for you and what's bad for you, and how you're bonded to reality and how you're bonded to the other people around you. Now these things can become very, very different, but unfortunately it's only when we're in a real difficult, dark point in our lives or do we have the ability to reject who we once were, an almost death of the old self. And these are the kind of problems you're not going to realise you have. You're not going to realise this is a thing until you start to get into the self-discovery stuff, until you analyse your dreams, until you ask self-reflective questions, until you keep a journal, until you reference your own self. Now, fortunately, what I've learned through my experience is it doesn't matter how awful your life is, because all the answers are inside. If you want to become your full self, you can alleviate difficulties, become yourself, and reference a new version of who you are. Now, fortunately, we can do this in the individual. You can do this with your therapist, keeping a journal, self-reflective questions, but we can also do this within the collective. Organisations have their own identity, and these 5,000 concepts can work as a transformation infrastructure, as a way of understanding the collective self. This is self-discovery on a huge scale, because it means solving problems that you didn't know you had. Now, the reason you didn't realise you had these problems is because we have single-minded systems. For example, you go to school, get a grade A to C or a 1 to 3, that's a single-minded system. A financial statement is a single-minded system, bringing together thousands of transactions on a piece of paper so that our minds can understand what's going on. Democracy in all its complexity, vote red, vote blue. Now, you've been processed through these single-minded systems. You've been processed to store information in your mind, to recite it as you work towards becoming an academic or a professor or a professional, that sort of thing. But the answer lies in the collective. The answer lies in multiple minds working together to solve a problem. And that's what these 5,000 concepts do. They get outside of your own version of reality so you can reference how things can be different. For example, say you're in a meeting, boardroom, startup, whatever, and you disagree on something. That is a good thing, because it means you understand how you see the world differently and you can design solutions so you can both get what you want. So you can see the same land through 100 pair of eyes. The quotation from Marcel Proust, I talk about a lot, about the true voyage isn't to travel through 100 lands with the same pair of eyes, but the true voyage is to see the same land with 100 pair of eyes. Psychological change, moving through who you are. Going from place to place in yourself, as somebody who's recently learned to do this, is an extraordinary feat, an extraordinary ability to have, because you can experience more of the space in front of you. You don't need the things outside of you to tell you who you are. You don't need the world for a place of confirmation. You can just be your own self, so long as you can reference your own self and understand yourself. And this is what I mean by solving problems you didn't realise you had. Because right now we don't have systems and structures in place for doing this. I guess what I'm trying to say is We haven't built the world based on who we are. We've built the world and its systems based on what we think, which is great for the collective and the overall, the economy and nationalities, but for the individual, well, at what time do you get to experience your own self? When do you begin to map and model your reality to better understand who you are so you can move through the world differently? So far, I haven't found much on this, but these 5,000 concepts, this idea of this magic happening when you can understand things you can and can't do, and how you see things, and how your memory works, and how you reference things, and how you learn things as you go. You can map and model and change and discover and dissect and create something brand new. You can solve a problem that you didn't even realise you had. And that is the power of self-discovery. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, stay tuned for more.